So now that we have our location, we can go ahead and narrow down the scope of our topo that we're going to have the surveyors go out and get. And they've gone out and they've located topographically all of, or some of the structures that are inside of the actual area that we need. So we don't need this big giant topo that we've got that we use preliminarily, but we're going to go ahead and narrow it down to a detailed topo of just this area. We might actually do an offset and tell them to pick up everything inside of 100 meters on the north side and 100 meters on the south side of the roadway alignment, just so that we know we have enough. And I think that's probably going to be good enough for the topography for the design road. So we'll go ahead and look at what they've picked up. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the DEM surface that we got from the GIS data. And I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I'm gonna turn back on my aerial map just so I can see it come in. And that way it'll give you an idea of what's going on in the background here whenever the topo comes in. So we're going to bring in the field to finish line work using a survey database. I've got a survey database here that I built called Civil 3D Demo, and I'm going to bring in their point file that they used or that they shot in the field, and it's going to create what's called field to finish line work. That field to finish line work, it's going to enable Civil 3D to actually draw some of the features that they picked up in the field. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to create a new network, and we will just call this existing survey. And we'll go ahead and import the point file that they gave us. So I'm going to select my existing ground surveyed point file. This is just a TXT file. Go ahead and open it. And be sure that all of my defaults are set here in my import point file dialog. So I'll go down and check through. We're using our figure prefix database that I generated for this topo. And everything looks to be good, so I'll hit OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring in the points that they shot, and it's going to draw the line work that they coded in the field. So you can see here there's a lot of information in this detailed survey. So we should have plenty of information to do our alignment and profile here in just a second. So not only did it bring in the points, but it also brought in the line work for the roadway on either side. So it also brought in the pavement, or actually the edge of shoulder. Brought in the sidewalk that we're crossing down here, the trail or path. It brought in a roadway crossing here. So you can see the line work is already generated. So what we're doing is we're reducing the amount of time that it takes the inside crew to actually show the line work that was picked up in the field by the surveyor. So it automatically draws those lines for you if you've coded it correctly in the field. So we've got our line work. Now I don't want to necessarily see all of these points all the time, so I'm going to generate a point group, and I'm going to call it no points. All right, and in this point group, we go ahead and give it styles of none so that it won't display anything, and I'll include all the points. I'll hit OK. So when I do that, it shows the actual symbols of the trees that came in. So if they'd have picked up any of the utilities or anything like that, maybe gate valves, maybe a sewer manhole here and there, it would have shown those symbols. The symbols would actually show up now and you could see them. So the next step is to go ahead and generate a surface from the topography that's come in from the surveyor. So we can see the line work. You can see it real well with the points set to that no points point group. And we can create an alignment and profile from this center line so we can start to do some detailed design. First off, we have to generate that surface. So I'm going to go ahead and create another surface. I'll call it existing surveyed. And we will set that to a style and hit OK. So how we're going to populate this surface is we're going to generate a point group that is only specific to our existing ground. Okay, so we're going to create a new point group. We will call this for existing topo survey. And we will go ahead and tell it to include everything and exclude anything with an elevation matching 0. So if we look at our point list, we can see that that'll kind of take out any of the 0 elevations that we've got in our points. So we don't have to worry about it generating topography or contours for something that it shouldn't. So I'll go ahead and tell it OK, and it'll populate that point group. And now we can see the points again. So let's go ahead and go to our surface, and I'm going to define it by my point group. And I'll go ahead and select that point group I just built for existing topo survey. And it generates our contours. Again, this is a relatively flat survey, a relatively flat set of data. Our contours are kind of, there's not that many of them. So we can actually change the style again for that surface. We go to the surface properties, and we can change that style again, and maybe to a smaller style, maybe a 1/2 meter, 2 meter style. And again, let's go ahead and look at that and make sure it's the colors that we can see. So I'll go ahead and change those to the majors to red and the minors to cyan. Again, if you have a company template, then that company template will already have these styles set up for you. So it'll basically just be opening up the surface and changing the style, and it'll look the way that you want. This not only helps you when you're trying to represent something in Civil 3D, meaning the style is already built for you in a company template, but it also standardizes the look for your company so that you can make standardization a little bit easier. So I've got some contours here that are traveling outside of my surface area, so I need to kind of tighten up the surface a little bit. So I'm just going to draw a real quick boundary so that I can kind of tighten up the contours so that they're not drawing out and being represented not necessarily wrong, but there's just not enough information out here point-wise to actually generate a good surface. So I'm going to just draw just a loose boundary around it. You can make this boundary as tight as you want, and we can actually adjust the boundary here in a second, and it will automatically update if the boundary is not tight enough for us. So we're getting here to the end. All right, so we have our boundary. So we're going to go ahead and add that boundary as an outer boundary. And what that's going to do is it's going to tighten up our surface here where we don't have the amount of shots that we really need to represent a good detailed survey. So I'll just go ahead and leave these default and hit OK. And our surface is now tightened up. So if I was to pick that surface now, I could look at it in our object viewer, and we could see how that surface looks.